Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you underground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you break. We've had enough of all the money you make. We've had enough, no more life at stake. We've had enough, this is a proclamation.
It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, people won't wait.
Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough
of all the rules you were breaking.
We had enough
of all the money you were making.
We had enough.
No more life gets taken.
We had enough.
This is a proclamation.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, just roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough
Of all the rules you're breaking.
We've had enough.
All the money you're making.
We've had enough.
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough.
This is the proclamation.
We've had enough. Trayvon Martin and Tommy Rice. We've had enough. Michael Brown and Eric gonna pay the price. We've had enough. Philando, Breonna, George Floyd. What? We've had enough. So many gone. How can we fill the void?
How can we feel?
We've had enough.
Void?
John Crawford, I know you've heard. We've had enough. Sandra Bland, come on and take a stand. We've had enough. Sean Bell, what the hell? We've had enough. Freddie Gray, did you hear what I said? We've had enough.
This is a proclamation.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here. Friday, warming up, a little rain, but a lot on my mind, and I think a lot on the mind of our community. So I want to do something that addresses the obvious pain our community is experiencing right now with these horrific gun violence incidents. But before that, in an effort to do some balancing, I want to do what I promised to do last week and connect with Lily Rankin, and to have the program start with focusing on something very positive, affirming, restorative, and that is every reason for us to maintain a sense of hopefulness and a sense of possibility, even though we are being challenged by things that are happening all around us. So Lily Rankin is a 10th grader at the Irondale School. Is that correct, Lily? Irondale School, and is also my great niece. And I mean that in both senses of the word. She's my niece's granddaughter, I think, but she is also my great niece, meaning she's a great person, and my niece. So that's Lily Rankin, but she's also an actor and singer. And I wanted her, before we got into the Healing Circle this week, to talk about her work as an actor, what she's done, what she's working on right now. And she's done some important work already. She starred in some major roles in community theater and is also presently writing as an intern for Insight News. And the assignment she has is to work directly with me and to do what we call in our business rewrites. Press releases come in, and I pass them to her, and we go over how do we change a press release from its original form to the form that we presented in the newspaper. And there's an art and a science to it. Most of all, it takes practice, and she and I are working, and she's developing chops, skill, capability, and I'm happy to have her working with me, member of the family in the business, but also a bright and gifted young person, young woman. So Lily, unmute your mic, first of all. And Dr. B, if you don't mind me going with this first, I wanted to ask Lily to talk about her work in the theater and the things you've done in the past, but the thing you're working on right now, first of all, is I want you to invite people to come see you.
So yes, I'm in a show right now. It starts on June 4th on Friday at 7 p.m. And the last show is on June 20th on Sunday at 1 p.m. And it's Shark the Musical at Ashland Theater Productions. So that's exciting. That's the new show that I've worked on.
So what's the name of it again? Say the name of it again.
Shrek the Musical.
Okay, Shrek the Musical. Tell me about it. Tell me something about it.
It's just like the movie. There's a movie about it.
Guess what? I didn't see the movie, so you got a blank slate here.
It's about an ogre, and he likes to be by himself. And then a bunch of these fairy tale creatures get pushed into his land. And there's this one really king. His name is Lord Farquaad. And he pushes them all there because he doesn't want anyone that doesn't look like him to be around his land, because he owns everything. And so we have to realize that we are technically freaks, but we are, and we push that as we are better, and we're okay with being that because we're cool that way. That's just how we were born. So that's basically what the show is. So yeah, it's really exciting.
So tell me, interpret that into the experience of people in the market in general today. What do you think? How does a story as a parable relate to reality today?
Because
sounds very much like it.
Yes. Everyone feels like they do something weird, or they aren't, perfect. And everyone has those moments. But we have to realize we are perfect in our own way. We have our own way of thinking that is amazing, and even us being here in the first place is beyond unbelievable. And so making your mark as your own person is what matters than being the social norm.
Great. Listen, talk about the other things that you've done in theater. I just remember the play that I saw you in was about the
Hidden Heroes.
Hidden Heroes, the scientists, the women who made the space flight possible.
Yes.
These are Black women. So talk about that one and other things you've done as well.
I'm going to talk about the 3 ones I've been in recently. I was in Elf Jr. and I played Charlotte Denon. I was in Ensemble. I was in Inch by Inch, which is a children's theater show, and I was Robin. And Inch by Inch is also a book. And I was in Spookly the Square Pumpkin, which is also a movie, and I played Mimi. And these are all at Stages Theater Company. Also, I was in Hidden Heroes, which was based off of Hidden Figures, the movie. And Hidden Heroes was a play that Shay and Signe wrote that was based off of Hidden Figures, and it was about the Black woman of NASA. And that was the first show I've ever been in, and I got the lead role. I was Mary Jackson. And it was just like the difficulties of what they had to face when they were first going into the show and first going into their work field, and the racial injustice they faced, and not only from other people but from people in their workforce as well. And we had to band together and be like, hey, we are powerful like other black ladies and men that have came before us. And that's what made us stronger, and that's what made us, graduate and become the Black women of NASA. um and so yeah, that's what that show was about. It was really powerful. It's one of my favorite shows I've been in. And it was a first, so it was the first one to be seen, and I was in it.
Yeah, well,
So
that's amazing. So you're lucky, but you're also prepared. I think you work and you think deeply, you work hard, and I think that you are intentional in wanting to engage and develop your gifts and talents. And I commend you and I applaud you for that. And I always mention that you are standing on the shoulders of some phenomenal people on your mom's side and on your dad's side, smart, gifted people that have always uh, added to the meaning of community and the value that we are trying to build in our community, in our culture. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being here as part of this program. So with that, I'm going to bring in my co-host today, Dr. Bravada Garrett Akinsanya, the principal at Brakens Psychological and Consulting Services, and the leader at the African American Child Wellness Institute. And we're working in collaboration as part of our team to consider the impact of COVID-19 and to promote the acceptance of the vaccination and other strategies to mitigate and to eliminate the threat of COVID-19 on individuals and families, but to do that in the context of families and children in particular. And Dr. B, what we've been doing here for the past several weeks in the Healing Circle is taking the model that you and the team have created to demonstrate and promote a protocol for how we connect and how we share and how we talk. And so with that, I'm going to ask you to explain the protocol again. I think we can never explain it too many times. We have to keep reinforcing it, and then lead us into today's conversation. And I'm going to start off by handing you the talking stick, Dr. B. There we go. And you have to unmute. Yeah.
I was saying, I've got the stick. I got
All
the
right.
stick. I want the stick. Give me the stick. So thank you so much, Brother Al and Sister Brenda Lau Gray and Lily Rankin. We do make a good little team when we get to a chance to sit in circle with one another. And this is probably one of my favorite topics, is to talk about kids and how they create ways to heal, how they show so much resilience, but also how fragile they are and how much they need care and guidance and direction and support. It's so interesting that when I think about little children, I've been looking at this commercial lately where the baby puts his whole foot in his mouth and the announcer says that's not edible. But it reminds me of how we come out and we're so flexible, not with just our body, but it symbolizes the flexibility that we need to possess in life. And so I wanted to just invite that as we begin. And given permission to speak from my elder brother Al and Sister Brenda, I also recognize our ancestors who whose genius and creativity took us to this space, and that we are sitting here, the embodiment of dreams that continue to be realized through us in spirit. And I also want to acknowledge that we are in the land and using the land that was nurtured and cared for by indigenous tribes, the Lakota and multiple tribal brothers and sisters who preserved it, loved it, cared for it, so that we could be able to even exist in it today. So I want to recognize uh, the humility that comes from knowing that all of these things, our ancestors, the land, the air, the wind, the water, they're bigger than all of us. They were here before us, and if we take care of them, they will continue to be here way past Lily. So I open the circle, and the circle means that because we use circles as Africans and other indigenous groups use circle to symbolize that the center is the equal access to power. So it's not hierarchical, it's circular, and everyone has equal access to voice and to teach and to learn and grow. Whether you're a young person or an elder, you have something valuable to teach. And that's what I love about our culture. And it allows us to do that and to be that. So, with that, also, as we sit in our chairs and we think about, um, as we begin to talk, things may be triggering. Our sister Yolanda brought it up last week about invite our audience that as we talk about things that may trigger you as you remember childhood things or ways that maybe you haven't been cared for, or maybe even challenges right now in your health and that of your children, that we invite you to just notice your feet on the floor, notice where you're sitting, look to your right, look to your left, look behind you and see what's behind you, look what's in front of you, and just notice and feel that you are here in this presence and that there's a way to get out, that you're safe, that you can move if you have to. And so I think that as we bring that back into the circle of healing, that as we talk to our audience and brothers and sisters across the nation now, that they know that we're really talking about saving our very lives and that of our children. And so now with the talking stick, we always use the talking stick to have voice. The person holding the stick has the ability to speak, and usually we ask people to pass the stick. So I'm going to pass the stick right now to Sister Brenda Lau Gray, and I'm passing the stick to you.
I don't know what to say today. I'm just a little numb behind these children being killed. And Al, I talked to some people in Kansas City, same things going on. And I don't understand it. My daughter asked me this morning, Mom, where are the guns coming from? You know, I said, well, we all have our questions, but these are babies, she said. I said, we know. And it's just not in Minneapolis. And so I had a real bad fall yesterday, and I was in so much pain. And I told Al I didn't want to miss Dr. Peter Hayden. And of course, our classmate, Kamal. But it's something about Dr. Hayden that just, you know, empowers you when you hear him. I mean, he said he's treated 40,000 people in Turning Point. And I went, whoa, where would they be had there not been a Dr. Peter Hayden? And I think the other thing I thought about, he said, because it was so powerful, Lily and Dr. B, because there were 4 people that grew up in Kansas City. And he said, and every school that I went to was named for a Black hero. Crispus Attucks, Benjamin Banneker, Booker T. Washington, where Al and I went. Wow. So it was a powerful show from listening to Al Flowers and AJ the day before, because they had lost a daughter and a sister, and listening to Peter Hayden, who had lost a 25-year-old. And then I thought about these babies, and I just said, God, we need some help. We need a prayer tree. We need some help. And it's out there. And I'm sure that as we continue these conversations, and Dr. B, thank you so much for Healing Circle. It has helped me personally, and I can't thank you enough. And I know we're going to continue to touch people. And Lily, before I get off, what was the first play? I didn't catch the name that you were in.
The one that I'm in right now, or the ones that I used to be in?
You listed 3, and I didn't catch the first one. I can go back, but I wanted to know about that one.
Okay, so right now the show I'm
I
in
got
is
Inch
Shrek.
by Inch. No, I got Inch by Inch, and then I got Shrek, and I got Hidden Heroes, and what was the other one?
I was in 2 more. Spookly the Square Pumpkin and Elf Jr.
That's the one I didn't get. Thank you. I have to keep my notes straight. I go back, but I need to keep them straight.
That's
And
fine.
Dr. B, last week that was a good program, and it was I was proud of the piece that I did on it because I learned a lot, and I thought Denise Ramsey Riley was just phenomenal. She really, really was, and it was like, oh, we've got to save our own children. We've got to step forward, but we've got people out there doing it. And it's going to have to, we're going to have to move up to another level, but we've got people doing it all over the country. So, but thank you so much. And thank Yolanda. Oh, she is just powerful. She really is, the way she expresses herself. And she had so much passion about these foster kids. And so I really, really enjoy it. And I really thank you. And congratulations, Miss Lily. I hope you have full house. So I'm going to pass it back to you, boss man.
Okay, all right, Brenda, thank you. Let me ask you to angle your camera down because we're cutting off the bottom. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
So we got you framed properly and perfectly, and that's
Okay.
excellent now. So, I over the past, yesterday, Dr. B, we were talking with, we opened with Kamal King. Kamal King is an attorney, retired attorney, was a corporate counsel at Coca-Cola in Atlanta. And Thursdays, we've been having this group of attorneys and others comment on the Derek Chauvin trial and on the matters pertaining to George Floyd and litigation and policies. And he opened yesterday with a statement about his concern about how many of our children are being impacted by this new rash of gun violence. And I don't think he was particularly aware of what happened in Minneapolis. He was just talking about what was going on in his neighborhood or in his town, Atlanta, Georgia. But what it revealed is that, as Brenda just said, this is happening all over the country. And you raised the question, Brenda Lyle Gray, where are the guns coming from? And I think Kamal mentioned something about that. I can't remember exactly. But the point he was making, if I recall it, was it's not even the question of the availability of guns. There's something else. Because guns are as American as apple pie, right? That's a problem, but that's the truth of the matter. And given that, how do we still figure out how we keep ourselves from victimizing others and being victims to gun violence, because we're talking about guns, but really violence of any kind? How do we change the dynamic, the process, the education, the consciousness about the sacredness of life? How do we get to where we feel that our lives matter so little that they are dispensable and disposable? And if they are dispensable and disposable, or if they're like celluloid, if they're like film, if they're like the fantasy that you see on the screen. You don't feel. You have an intellectual experience in a movie, but it's a story, and you know that the people that die in the movie get up and do the next job. But if you can't differentiate that story as a story and bring that activity into your personal community life, then we got a problem. How do we address that? And, I think about even things like people who drive, and I have to confess I do this sometimes myself, around with loud music playing. And somewhere in the back of my mind, Dr. B, I'm thinking this is a soundtrack to my life. But at a certain point, that's kind of both selfish and irresponsible, and it's imposing on other people if I feel like I have the right to impose my idea, my version, my vision on others without their consent. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but it's just a thought that's in my mind I want to share with you. Then yesterday we talked about an article that I had written some 20 years ago, and I gave it in the paper and also presented it as testimony in the Minnesota State Legislature in the committee on criminal justice. It was a joint House and Senate Committee on Criminal Justice, and the piece I wrote was called Black Crime, Black Punishment. And the principal argument was that we in the Black community, and by extension all communities, have to feel a sense of sovereignty or equity or investment or a sense of being a part of the decision-making process and the delivery apparatus. And so I said, right now, the white media and common culture, what's the right word for it? There's a sense abroad in the community that if you're talking about dysfunction, talking about pathology, I'm not sure if that's the right word or not, but if you're talking about, we're described as a dysfunctional people. And that's what people expect of us, how they explain all the bad stuff that we do that happens to us. But they explain it in a way that says that's just the way it is. And it's not their fault, it's our fault, right? And when we say no, this pain, and we start learning about trauma that you and your colleagues have brought to our awareness, but I'm telling you, because before you and Peter Hayden and the members of the Black psychologists started talking about Black trauma, we didn't have that in our common everyday vocabulary. We were living with the idea that we were just bad people, and we had to figure out how to condemn the bad among us and try to elevate the good, but that we accepted that stigma that there are certain members of us that were bad people that we have to hide from the public and protect ourselves from. I'm rambling here, but there's a point to all of this. The point is that I said in the article and in the testimony, we have to figure out if our people are 20% or 30% of the state's prison population, we should have all of those prison cells in our neighborhood, maybe on the corner of Plymouth and Penn in North Minneapolis, so that if people in this neighborhood go afoul of the law and have to be adjudicated, that their service, their correction takes place in sight, right here in the middle of the community. It's not something that is whisked away and hidden, but it happens right here. And not only should it be in the center of our community, the judges that weigh guilt or innocence should be from our community. The jurors that consider the cases should be from our community. The prosecutors should be from our community, and so should the defending attorneys, the defense attorneys. And then the caseworkers and the probation officers and the pretrial investigators. And guess what? Who builds the actual prison itself? That should be a Black contractor who lives in this neighborhood. Who does the maintenance on the lawn and landscape around the facility? Who is the food contractor that sells food to the inmate population and who manages the vending machines inside the building? should be black, should be black. So I'm saying that we have to figure out a way that every element, every aspect of this process called community justice or punishment or be uh, uh, that we're involved in that as well. The policing should be policemen and women who live in this neighborhood, our people. And once we are fully vertically, horizontally integrated into this mix, it takes on a new tenor and it gives us more ability to be flexible, responsive, embracing of our totality in ways that we're not right now. So I'll finish with this. This is going on, but I talked to Batala a couple of days ago, and we talked about sometimes our people are mad at our electeds. What are they doing? What's the mayor doing? And we're blaming stuff on the mayor, and we're blaming stuff on Fifth Ward and Fourth Ward aldermen saying that they're not really working or listening to us. And I said, well, we have a right to hold any elected accountable, but it's not just them, it's all of us. And part of it is that we have to look at a neighborhood like 50th and France. It's like, Brenda, it's like, what's the neighborhood where Pooch's 210 was in Kansas City?
47th and Broadway.
Okay, so it's like that kind of neighborhood where we
The
grew
plaza.
up. So that's the Minneapolis 50th and France here. And in that community, there are layers and layers and layers and layers of relationships and redundancies that create a matrix of support that creates an expectation and systems to nudge everybody towards succeeding within that process, right? And there are backstops and fail safes and backstops and fail safes, and the bank is a part of it, and the hospital is a part of it, the clinic is a part of it, the candlestick maker, the baker, the shoemaker, all of them are part of it. The school is a part of it, and everything is connected in a way that you look at our community, we are threadbare, and the threadbareness comes from two things. One, structural barriers that deny and uh, challenge or create difficulty for us to form that kind of cohesiveness, and at the same time, an information environment that simultaneously damages our perception of who we are and of our possibilities. So all that to say, we got a lot to work with, and I'm going to pass the talking stick to you, Dr. B, because I know you can talk about everything I said and put it in context.
Boy, I'm telling you, I don't know if I can hit all of it, but I actually saw an overarching thread. And the thread that knits everything you said together is really about, it really is about building community. It's really about a sense of belonging. So years ago, this white psychologist, Eric Erickson, came up with these, he called them a hierarchy of needs that people had, that you had needs first for physiological things, food, water, touch, shelter. But after that, you had other needs, and some of those needs involved having a sense of agency. Some of them involved having a sense of belonging, a sense of being loved. And so when I think about the people who are going around shooting up our neighborhoods, I know that from my 40 plus years of experience as a clinician, I know that if kids don't feel like they have a home, the streets will give them one. The streets will give them a home. The streets will give them family. That's why, as you know, the motto of Project Marua, Premeditated Parenting Boot Camp, is we are fighting the battle to save our children's lives. And one of the enemies, it involves the streets, gangs, pregnancy, low grades, violence, and the parents say, and sometimes ourselves. So when we stop looking elsewhere for the solutions, and we remember really get out of that cultural amnesia that Mother Atum talks about. Get out of that and actually recognize who we are, where we came from, what our purpose is. Recommit to that purpose. Then we will see that many of the people who have handguns and going around shooting up places, they feel bigger with the gun than they do without it. And all of them started out as 2-year-old babies,
Hmm.
3-year-old babies, 4-year-old babies. And they weren't thinking at that point about killing anybody. They just wanted to be loved, to be to play, to be accepted, to be held, to be treated with love and respect, to be safe. And so what happens is we all hear that saying that hurt people will hurt people. So every time I hear a child gets shot, a child getting shot, I remember bullets don't have names.
Hmm.
And people who are squeezing those triggers, they don't have enough um, executive functioning or that front part of their brain that's working to protect them. Because that front part of our brain, our prefrontal cortex, it leads to problem solving. It leads to consequential thinking. So I think when I'm holding a gun, if I'm using that front part of my brain, that when I'm calm and I'm clear and I'm using my gun, I'm not hyped up on dope or anything. I'm clear thinking and I think, wow, that gun could shoot a baby. If I shoot it in the house, I could kill a kid who has nothing to do with it. And then comes the guilt. And on top of the guilt comes shame. And on top of the shame comes, well, I can't do nothing about it. And the hardening of the heart. And that happens repeatedly, repeatedly, until we get to a point where people have become emotionally cut off. They have that's one of the byproducts of mental side. People kill off your humanity. They can get out of line and you can just stand in line for yourself and do it to yourself now after they've done it. That's kind of what Willie Lynch was talking about. After
Hmm.
300 years after treating them badly, he said that for 300 years the slave would continue to battle amongst themselves. They'd really continue to divide and conquer. They wouldn't trust each other. They wouldn't take care of each other. They wouldn't fight. Because I always wondered, how the heck can you have 50 slaves on a plantation, one master, one overseer, and a wife, and you're fixing their meals? I'm just, you're fixing their meals. You're doing their clothes. You're all over them. And they still get to contain you?
Hmm.
Wow.
You know, I just can't imagine it. They get to psychologically contain you. They kill off your humanity, and you internalize that into believing that you are not worth anything. And that worthlessness gets passed on to the children. Let me tell you, there's even a researcher, Dr. Seligman, said that just like we learn to be helpless, which that's another whole paradigm, we can learn to be optimistic. But whether we choose to see the world in a negative light or in a positive light, those self statements originate from the person who is our very first teacher, and that's usually our mother.
Hmm.
So if our mother feels helpless, if our mother can't find the vocabulary to tell us we're valuable, if she's been so damaged by her mother and her father and her sisters and her brother and her community, so the mother isn't it alone, but she is the foundation because she's the first person that tells you it matters if you're hungry because then I'm going to feed you. It matters if you're wet because then I'm going to change your diaper. It matters if you're lonely, then I'm going to hold you and I'm going to rock you and I'm going to sing to you. It's so the first learning of humanity comes from the womb of the Black mother. And when she has that baby, when she brings that child into the world, we want our mothers to be well so that that wellness would be the transgenerational gift instead of the less thanness, which is a transgenerational curse. And it impacts our children through the lifespan. We see kids who like right now when we're dealing with COVID, they see their parents not modeling, getting shots. They see their parents not wearing a mask, and it influences them. And I actually am ready to pass the talking stick to Lily to bring her expertise in as a young woman, black woman, dealing with the very outcome that I'm talking about. Because you can't be in a world where you don't know people are using drugs, smoking reefer. I guess y'all call it marijuana. I don't know what y'all call it nowadays. And doing all those things. You live in a world where that's happening. So how do you think that we as adults, when it comes to COVID, drugs, dropout, gangs, what do you think we as adults could learn if we stop long enough to listen to our kids? I'm giving you the baton. I'm in the talking stick.
Thank you for the
You're
talking
welcome.
stick. Um, that's a good question, actually. No one really asks that, you know? It's usually just like because there is a pushed narrative in black families, like, oh, well, I do it, you don't do it. And so if they see that happening, kids see that happening, and it's over and over again, and they don't see anything bad going out of it, they're going to try it or try to do it, or at least have friends that are like, "Oh, you want to do it?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's good. I'll sure, why not? My mom does it, my dad does it." You know, it's like a bad choice to have in the first place. Um, and so just modeling after like what you want your kids to do yourself.
Mm,
Um, but also stopping and listening to your children about drugs and making it not just a school assembly thing, making it so you know and your children know, like, hey, it's not good to do this. There's nothing good about what's happening. There's um multiple reasons, and like giving them reasoning of why it's bad, because most people, they go, "Oh, well, don't do drugs," and then just don't give out anything else. Like, why can't
mm,
I do drugs? Why should I not do drugs? Because if you give them a reasoning and you're like, "Well, this could happen and you could possibly die," then they'd be like, "Oh, I don't want to do it." You know? Because if I go and give my dog a dog treat, and I don't say, "Oh, you did good. You did good," after giving him an order, and I just continuously give him dog treats, it's not going to help. You want him to do you want him to do that trick, and you give him a treat. It's not just giving him and giving him and giving him and not telling him what to do after. So I just feel like, letting someone, like giving reasoning would be really good, and listening in general is a really good idea to have. Because not a lot of people do listen, and it's a sad reality, but some parents are like, "Oh, I'm so open to hear you talk and about your problems and about your stuff." And then when they do, they don't understand what to do. They don't know how to do it. And that's a bad part of our community as well, that we together need to fix. Um, but yeah, it's just little things like that could tweak the system better.
Can I have the stick back right quick?
Yes.
I'm excited because actually everything you just said has a scientific, psychological basis behind it. You actually talked about positive reinforcement. You talked about teaching children boundaries and rewarding them when they follow things that are good. You also talked about brain development issues. And one of the brain development issues that we talk about as psychologists is that children from early childhood on up to teenage, even post teenage young people, they need to have material explained. They need that pathway in their brain to be cleared. It's like it's a forest, and that you have to get a bucket of water from one end of the forest to the next. Well, if you have to go around all these different trees and there's no pathway that's smooth, you're going to be slower at processing that bucket of water to the other end. But what if your parent says, "I know the way," And this is the way you go. Follow me. This is what you do. This is how it works. You make a left at that tree because it's clear over there. And they show you over and over and over. And they allow you to make mistakes so that you can integrate a new way of correcting them, so that you can learn on your own what to do. But they're there to hold you up. They're there to teach you. You just talked about brain development. And we know that when young people get that kind of nurturing that you just described, that when their brain is finally developed, which is around 25 or 26 years old, most of the work has been done. They will be able to do what you just said: problem solve, think things out, ask for help, give help, survive and thrive. That's what you just said, sister. So I was getting so excited because I know you're brilliant, and I thought you were, but you just showed out today.
Thank you.
That's so cool.
You're welcome. That is cool. So who wants to talk and stick out? Pass it to Brother Al.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I was actually trying to reach out to Brother KG Wilson as we were working here, because he and I were talking yesterday, and I was telling him how he was telling me how hurt he is, how deeply he is suffering right now. And he said that early on, so the paper, the Inside News that's coming out, it's actually Monday's paper, but it's on the streets today and tomorrow, is a picture of him and his granddaughter, the child that died, and a picture of the other two children, both of whom are in the hospital now. And as I understand it, these two children, I think 1 8 and 1 10, are either side by side in the same room. They didn't know each other before, or in adjacent rooms, and both in critical condition. But the daughter, when he made one statement, the granddaughter, when he made one statement, he was asking, demanding, but asking, begging the perpetrators, the people who shot this child, people involved in this shootout, to turn themselves in. And he actually said, turn yourself in right now. I'm giving you 24 hours to do it. And he was angry. What he told me was that, and I hope he's okay, I think he's listening right now. And I wish I could have connected in time to have him join the conversation, but we're going to connect in a minute. I just want him to know that we are listening, we are watching, and we're sending our love and support to him and the family, and expressing our anger as well, and our disappointment in us that this continues to happen in our community and in any community anywhere. But he was saying how angry he was, and he was too angry to talk early on, and he's trying to wait till he can decompress and be, more mindful and present, and say what's on his mind and what's on his heart. And he said, if I said something on the radio or on the TV, because I haven't watched it, that wasn't appropriate, I apologize. I said, no, brother, what you were was righteous.
Righteous anger.
Righteousness is what came forward, and you, in the energy and in the intensity and the gravity of the moment, were a vessel for a righteous expression. And you're not only talking now, KG, through this horrific experience, because it is horrific, but you're talking to the entire family, to all of us everywhere. What you are in right now is a reflection of something that we all have to own and deal with and find a way to heal through and prevent in the future. So that was my thought. And I'm saying this now simply as a word of acknowledgement to him, but not only to him, to the other parents and grandparents of the two other children, and then to the other parents way before, that this has happened to their sons and daughters, and also to parents and brothers and sisters around the country who are in this position of hurt and anger because of what we are doing and what's being done to us at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so the question still remains, how do we, Dr. B, find our way through this, find our way out of it? And I keep thinking that, you know, I'm not one of the ones that want to blame everything on white people. I think we have to take some responsibility for all that we do. We have choices to make, but we have to make a choice to fight for what is right, and to stand up for what is right and to walk in a way that is right. And if that means standing up even in our neighborhoods to our sisters and brothers and nephews and cousins and kids around the corner that we know are not doing the right thing, we got to figure out how do we deal with each other that way. And then it hasn't got to be in a way that punishes or judges them for their particular specific, uh, uh, what's the right word for it, vulnerability or misfunction, dysfunction of the moment, because it's part of a process and a path. But how do we figure out how to gird them, undergird, and surround them, right, with other choices, other opportunities, and resource them? That's the key. For me, it's a question of properly resourcing our families, our community. So I say, we have North Point Health and Wellness. We got the African American Child Wellness Institute. What if there were 500 therapists working for the African American Child Wellness Institute? Well, what you gonna do with 500, therapists? You get one on every block, and your job is to know everybody on that block, right? And also to train your successor, right? So you create revenue streams around problem solving and serving our community. I say that, like everybody else, I would love to see the perfection, the creation, the introduction of a pill that you can take and it protects you from cancer, right? But the path towards that science, that discovery, is one that has led to the creation of the Mayo Clinic, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, and clinics like that across the country. Houston, Cleveland Clinic, different institutions, but those are institutions that through NIH and CDC have been able to tap into public not charities, public treasuries to create research. And the research that they're doing is creating thousands of jobs, and those thousands of jobs become an economy. And so if we are continually described as a community that's beset by so-called intractable problems, why don't we discover a way to make the investment required that we can turn our situation around? And as opposed to being the community with the greatest health disparities in the state of Minnesota, we should figure out and establish that North Minneapolis and South Minneapolis will become number one in health outcomes for families and for children. And it's a question of investment and a question of will. And the pursuit of that goal is will attract the investment of energy, time, and material and money required to make it so. What do you think? I'm gonna pass it back to you, Dr. B, and to Brenda Gray.
Okay, I gotta tell you, what you just said was so exciting to me. I've always had this fantasy. I have lots of them about community. When Trayvon Martin was killed, and they were talking about him having a hoodie. I told some of my colleagues, you know what? We should form a group called Psychologists in the Hood. And we go over our hoodies from house to house, letting people know what psychologists do, letting them know how they can get help, helping them fill out these papers called DOPAs, Delegation of Parental Authority, so that if they ever catch a case from CPS by law, that they cannot get their children. They can never, by law, take your children if you fill out one of those DOPAs. And so we talked about how do we protect our kids. One way is education, the other is access. And to be able to walk those streets like that, having 500 or 5,000 people who really care about the community, helping community people, even lay people. Because we mothers and fathers, they can influence other mothers and fathers. And so I think, and kids can influence each other. So we could build that army of wellness That's what we need, an army of wellness, because we are fighting a battle for our very lives, for our very lives. And sometimes that battle is fat and obesity. Sometimes it's drugs and alcohol. Sometimes it's unprotected sex or gambling. Sometimes it's negligence because you psychologically you can't take care of yourself. How are you going to take care of your children? Sometimes it's being Minnesotaized. That's what I call it, where you can't say anything. If you don't say something nice, don't say anything at all, and you see people around you, their family crumbling, and you want to stay in your lane and not offer a hand or get in their business. Well, one of the reasons we survived this long is because people used to know how to get in your business, and they would get in your business with so much love you couldn't turn them around. They might bring you a big meal to your house for you and the kids, but while Miss Bertha's sitting there, she's gonna be teaching you that this is not the way you do it, sister. This is what you got to do differently, sister. We need to rediscover, like I said, who we are. Oh, I'm gonna pass it to Sister Brenda because I know she can do it.
Well, I thought of one, well, really two things. When we interviewed, or when Al interviewed Mickey Moore, who is a candidate for the Ninth Ward, I think, Al, I'm not for sure. But he mentioned the fact that there were 13 wards, and we really didn't need all of those, but the fact that this stuff is only happening in 3 of the 13, because the other 10, they have each other's backs, and they know their community and they build upon it. So that was one thing I thought about, and Lily will kind of appreciate this. And I'll say, I know we're running out of time, so I'll make this story real quick. My daughter was in middle school, and I dropped her off every day before I went to class. And it was on Santa Monica Boulevard in LA. So the kids would holler back, "Come on, Gianni, let's go down to the beach," because the bus, they get off the school bus and they jump on the regular bus and they go to the beach. And Gianni one day turned around and said, "Have you met my mama?" So that was the end of it. They didn't ask her anymore. And Al and I grew up with those kind of mamas, because if my mother was at work, Nanny was sitting on the porch. And if I had done something, and I know about Mrs. Powell on the corner, Bernard and Burnell and Teal and them, we had that type of community, and we've got to get back with that. Yeah. But it starts with the school, and I'm so concerned about what's going to happen to our kids when school starts.
Yeah.
So we're just going to have to look at the levels that we have to deal with and not be afraid of them. Yeah. You know, it was like when I fell yesterday, and it was a hard fall. And this guy said, "Are you going to get up?" I said, "You're right. I am going to get up, and I am going to walk this off, because if I get up and feel sorry for myself, I'm going to be in worse shape." So it's like when you're talking about the mother and whatever, we have to work with these parents. There's going to have to be more parents to turn around and say, "Have you met my mother?" And my daughters talked about how I forced them to read about their history because it wasn't being taught in the classroom. So we have to do that as well. So that's my last comment. It was really kind of bad to have a Black Panther wannabe as a mother and a teacher. They were in trouble.
Thank you so much. Al, you got the stick, brother.
Well, thank you. I think we're out of time. This has been a good conversation. So I invite people that are listening or watching via the Black Press of America, Black Press USA, the Facebook page of National Newspaper Publishers Association, and those who are watching through the McFarlane Media dashboard, social media platforms, those on YouTube, to continue to spread the word. This is an important conversation. We do this, the Healing Circle, every Friday. but we do conversations with Al McFarlane every day at 1 o'clock, and we are delivering what I promise is robust conversation. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Take care.